On a luxurious utopian world, a disease outbreak forces a woman famed and chosen for her exceptional beauty to undertake a journey to understand herself, her people, and confront both past and future in Where It Rains in Color. That's the book I'm reviewing on this episode of SFF 180. Hello again, everyone. Thomas here, your host as always. Thank you so much for joining me. Where It Rains in Color is the debut of Denise Crittendon, whose career has spanned academia, journalism, and motivational speaking, and who has now released her first novel at the age of 69. Just in case any of you were thinking you might be running out of time to realize your artistic dreams. This is a flawed, yet bold and highly original hybrid of science fiction and fantasy, rooted in one very good idea, that beauty is political. A society's beauty standards are shaped by those in power, and doors will open or close for you depending on how well you meet them. But these standards are confining and limiting, perhaps also dangerous, even for those who do. It's the far, far future, and we're on the world of Swazembe, a planet colonized by the distant descendants of Africa's Dogon people. It's a planet where color itself is a tangible element, with blazing crimson deserts and lakes of vapor, whose inhabitants can live for up to 500 years. A lavish vacation utopia for tourists from all over the 22 worlds of the Coalition, where citizens travel to and fro on gusts of wind. Liliala has just beaten 17 other candidates for the role of Rare Indigo, a woman of exceptional beauty with the power to make the melanin in her skin shimmer with light, creating a powerful hypnotic effect. As the Rare Indigo, she will serve as a dignitary and celebrity representative of her people. But despite the stature and importance of her role, Liliala, at 50 years old, still very young and immature for a Swazembe native, is impulsive, rebellious, frequently breaking the rules and straining at the leash of her duties. To be the Rare Indigo, you see, is no easy task. Liliala is not allowed to travel off-world, for instance. And the previous Rare Indigo, Ahonote, advocated her position to flee to a remote village, where she's been living under a vow of silence for reasons no one quite understands for over 40 years. As Liliala chafes under her restrictions while the day of her formal ceremony approaches, she begins to hear voices. And just before the ceremony, she breaks out in a horrific and inexplicable skin condition that stops her ability to shimmer and leaves enormous lesions called keloids all over her face. Enter the Clab, a species from a neighboring world who have been excluded from the Coalition. They have developed a serum called Mecha that can cure this skin condition, which is in fact spreading among many worlds, but they'll only offer it for a price. The story then follows Liliala on kind of a spiritual journey as she not only pursues her own healing, but learns more about her people's link to their almost mythic Dogon ancestors, and gains knowledge that will impact the future of the Coalition itself. Crittendon has ambition to burn. She is very keen on the notion of beauty and its role in who does and does not hold power, shown in the contrast between the Rare Indigo and the Swazembe people, where melanin is held as the highest possible beauty standard, and the Clab, a backwater society whose people have outsized skulls and translucent skin, making them hideous in the eyes of other Coalition worlds. But Crittendon's storytelling chops as a first-time novelist aren't always up to the task of setting her ideas into a smoothly flowing narrative. Pacing is inconsistent, and too many characters lack the necessary depth for strong reader connection. Personal interactions and dialogue sometimes feel stilted. Liliala does have a character arc that takes her from childishness to greater maturity and empowerment, but few supporting characters register very deeply. Trieka, a Clab scientist and spy, is probably the only exception, but even she is a bit one-note. She's a cold manipulator among her own people, who comes to the bitter understanding that she'll always be considered repellent and inferior and less than to all others. Now, as a science fiction reader, I came to this book understanding I was getting a space fantasy, but there were still some things I felt could have benefited from greater attention. There isn't really much world building going on, there's just lots of gorgeous scenery. Crittendon seems to have envisioned her coalition strictly by adhering to the unfortunate trope of single-purpose planets. Little thought has been given to political systems and how they're structured. When the coalition meets, it just feels like a bunch of men in a room yelling. Not to say that doesn't resemble a lot of real-world situations, but for a novel, I need things a bit more fleshed out. And I kept wanting to know more details, like how space travel is done here. We are told archaeologists and researchers go back to Earth frequently, and one of the story's few humorous touches is the way ancient pop songs are regarded as sacred hymns. But you know, Earth must be really, really far away? So what kind of ships are going there? Under whose authority? And what technology did the Clab employ to capture an asteroid? These might seem like nitpicky details, but even for the most fantastical of futures, they do count towards believability and immersion. Mostly Where It Rains in Color gets by on vibes and some good themes about agency in the face of cultural standards and the demands they put on us. It's a book that some readers will find easier to connect to than others, but it signals the emergence of a deeply committed talent who has undeniable potential to, one day, bring us stories that really will shimmer. And that is all I have time for in this episode of SFF 180. Remember the most important thing, everybody. These are reviews. You will not always agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, please hit that like button. Share the video far and wide with all of your SFF reading friends, and above all, please subscribe. If you have not done so, that is how the channel grows. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store and at my Patreon, where recruits into Wink's Army get little perks like early access to some of my videos, if I finish them on time, but mostly the Patreon is for helping me pay Matt Olson, my amazingly gifted and talented channel artist who does all of my beautiful thumbnails for me. So I want to thank all of you for that additional support. If you're one of my patrons, I want to thank all the rest of you guys for being the very best viewers in all of BookTube, and until I see all of you next time, stay safe and healthy, and happy reading.